We've got some new polling in on the 2024 presidential election, and it's not good news for Joe Biden. It's a bloodbath. In fact, can we say that? We can say that. You betcha. Plus, an incredible, smart young man stepped into the studios of The View and spoke truth to stupid. And you're going to want to see that video. And squatters, what do you do about them? Geez, I don't know. I'm a liberal. Seems like it's fair for somebody to just come in and steal somebody's house. Don't try it in Florida. There's a brand new law there to keep it from happening. Why isn't it already a federal law? We're going to get into all of those details. Oh, and potentially a transgender fight over at the UFC, but not the kind of transgender fighting that you're used to over at UFC. Are we used to that? We'll tell you all about that coming up, too. It's a special Thursday edition with a tan suit. It's O'Connor. No, it's Larry. I'm Larry O'Connor. This is Larry. We're brought to you by the Electronic Payments Coalition, and I think I should be able to say the name of my show and me for once. Thanks for joining us live on Rumble as we're streaming right here as we do every day at noon. If you're in the chat there, say hey. I'll try to interact with you as much as I can during the show, but it's kind of fast paced. We do what we can, but we'll say hello. If you're not watching us live, come and check us out sometime. Otherwise, we appreciate you watching us after the fact on whatever video platform you're watching on. And make sure you share the video, copy that link, put it on your social media page, and subscribe and get notifications and all that jazz. And don't forget to check out townhall.com, all of our sites where the VIP section is hopping. It's happening. And you want to be a VIP member of Town Hall, use the code word Larry, and you will get half price right now. That's amazing. You get an ad-free experience over at all the Town Hall sites, Town Hall, Hot Air, Red State, PJ Media, Twitchy, and Bearing Arms, and a whole lot of bonus content that only VIP members get. You use the code Larry right now when you sign up, and you get 50% off. Thank you for that. Okay, we've got a whole new round of polls right now on where the American people are politically on the 2024 presidential election and who their preference is. And it's not good news for Joe Biden. This is an absolute bloodbath. We'll start with the biggest national poll announced on Fox News. It's a Fox News poll. Brett Baer's special report broke the news yesterday.
We have brand new Fox News polls on the current state of the presidential election in a hypothetical five-way ballot test, which includes Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein, all candidates. Former President Donald Trump is narrowly favored over President Biden with a 5-point edge. That 5-point difference also carries over to our head-to-head matchup, man-to-man. And on their favorable ratings, independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tops Trump and Biden with 47%, 45%, and 39%, respectively.
All right. Now, a couple of things that are noteworthy here. And yes, if you've been watching this show for the last several months, you know that I try not to fixate too much on national polls because you're smart enough to know that that's not how we elect a president in this country. We elect a president state by state. Now, stay with us because we've got state by state polling as well. And the bloodbath continues, especially in the most important battleground states. We'll share that with you in just a moment. But I do want to highlight a couple of things that are incredibly important here in this national poll from Fox News. The first item number is here. Yes, this so-called five-way race. You see that Trump leads 43-38 over Biden. I don't know why they do it this way. It's what, alphabetical? Why if Trump's in the lead, he should be on the top line. Come on, guys. But he leads. But here's the important criteria here to point out. Trump leads Biden by 5 points in this five-way race, right? But then when you look at the head-to-head race, he still leads by 5 points. What does that tell you? That yes, some people, some voters are leaving Trump to go vote for Joe Biden, or excuse me, for one of the other three candidates other than Joe Biden, but just as many people are leaving Biden as well. So in other words, it's kind of a wash right now. The fact that he maintains a 5-point lead, whether it's a crowded field or whether it's just head to head, is huge. But the biggest number that you're looking at right now is not just the 5-point lead that Trump has over Biden in this Fox News poll. It's the fact that he has hit the magic 50% number. This early on, when you've got a 50% mark in the national polling, It's gigantic. Why? Well, do the math. You're missing 5% of the electorate in this poll, right? Understand the people who were polled were given 3 choices. Do you want Trump? Do you want Biden? Or are you undecided? Now, let me tell you something. I don't quite understand any human being that votes in the United States of America right now who is undecided. After all, it's exactly the choice you had 4 years ago, right? Gee, I don't know. I haven't really made up my mind about those two. You just voted 4 years ago for the exact same choice. Although there is a difference, because you see, at least 4 years ago, you could say, well, let's give Biden a shot. You never know. It can't be that bad. But now you know how bad it is. You know very well how bad it is. So with 5% undecided, without the undecideds, he's already at 50%. Republican gets 50% nationwide. That's an electoral bloodbath, because Republicans have not won 50% or more of the vote, the national vote in America, since 2004 with George W. Bush. And in 2000, he didn't do it either. Before that, you have to go all the way back to George Bush's dad in 1988 when a Republican won 50% or more. Do you hear what I'm saying? Since 1988, with George Herbert Walker Bush, a Republican in a presidential election has won 50% or more in the national vote only once. George W. Bush in 2004. And right now, Donald Trump is sitting at that mark. Now, listen, I know there's a lot of game to be played. But if you look at this number and you really analyze it like I have, you recognize the reality that Joe Biden isn't going to get all of the 5% undecided if the election were today. In fact, I would venture to guess that over half of the undecideds right now have decided. But they don't tell some stranger on the phone that they're going to vote for Donald Trump. And I think we all know why. But the news gets even worse for Joe Biden as you break down what the priorities are on policies right now and which candidate has the better solutions. CNBC broke that down specifically on their survey on the economy.
Now let's look at who voters think have the best policies on these issues. Let's go. Overall economy, the 4th most important issue. Donald Trump has a 30-point lead on that. Crime tied for 4th, 28-point lead for Trump. Inflation, the most important issue, 27-point for Donald Trump. Healthcare, Biden has a 19-point advantage on that. And the middle class, that's a place, as Wolf was talking about, where there is some battle right there. Who has the best policies for the middle class? Let's go to the second tier of issues, which aren't all that far down, but they're not in the top 5. Immigration, 48-point lead for Donald Trump. Taxes, 32.
I need to pause here just for a second, and we will finish, but you can see the numbers and the data here. The second tier thing, I don't know the point or how they rate these numbers at the CNBC poll, but most polls I look at right now, when you ask the American people what is the single most important issue to you, it is immigration. It is border security. And you can see the advantage Trump has here by 48 points. I'm guessing, since they're calling this the All-America Economic Survey, that they were asking these questions as it relates to the economy. And that's what puts immigration down in the second tier. But make no mistake, for almost every poll I've looked at, when you just ask the American people blindly, what's your most important issue in this country? It's immigration and border security. And then that, by 48 points, Trump is winning. That's game over. All right.
2 for Trump. China, 28 for Trump. Come to abortion, a 25-point lead for President Biden. And Social Security, another potential battleground area. Now
it's not really a battleground area, because I'll be honest with you, neither candidate is going to do anything about Social Security, or at least promise to do anything about Social Security in this election cycle. Biden will scare you and make people terrified that Republicans are going to take away your Social Security. They're not going to do anything about it. CNBC continues here on the breakdown of the economic policies of this election.
I think voters have decided the cure for inflation is not Biden.
Yeah.
I think that's one part of it. And then maybe there's a sense that Trump might spend less. He's seen also in other data we have better on the federal deficit, better on taxes. So that might also be seen as the reason why Trump is seen as better. I think Biden erred terribly with this Inflation Reduction Act, we're calling it, which was really a spending act.
Can we just point out, I mean, it's easy to find the insidious, over-the-top, in-your-face media bias that you get from MSNBC and Joy Reid and Chuck Todd and George Stephanopoulos. And I mean, please, we could literally do a show every day on their media bias. It's the barely visible media bias, the subliminal media bias that you get from these places that actually drives me up the wall. When I see it, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. You see it, right? Look at the Chiron. You just heard the polling data. This might be the worst week in Joe Biden's political career, certainly as president, with regard to polling numbers that have come out. We've got more to share with you, but look at what the Chiron says from CNBC. Look at that Chiron. And I know what they're describing there. Biden gets a modest bump. That's the Chiron. So you know how this is effective? If you're not actually watching the television, if it's playing along with 8 other televisions in a bar or restaurant in New York while you're having a beer with your buds, or if it's just on in the background at somebody's house and the volume is down and you're just looking, that's the message you get. That's your headline. You have no idea what they're actually talking about, but you get this. Biden gets a modest bump. Oh, Biden's having a good day. No, he's not. The modest bump is that he's not as horribly unpopular as he was the last week when they took the poll. His unfavorable number is up a teeny bit, probably because he was photographed eating an ice cream cone. But the Chiron in your pals in the media, and don't tell me that CNBC doesn't have a political bias, because they're owned by NBC, they're in New York, they have a very strong media bias. It's just not as blatant and in your face. And frankly, that's the worst kind. Biden gets a modest bump. You should be ashamed of yourself. But you know what? While we're talking about our friends over at MSNBC, let's see how they analyze this for their very sad viewers. It's pretty fun.
Despite President Joe Biden holding rallies across the country in recent weeks to tout the state of the U.S. economy, his message still may not be resonating with many Americans. According to a new Fox News poll, more than half of registered voters say they would trust Donald Trump more with the economy than President Biden, and by something of a significant margin, 56% to 41%.
By the way, this isn't even one of the, they always tell you, well, our primetime shows are the opinion shows, but during the day, we're just straight news. There's literally only one cable network that adheres to that, and it's Fox News. I've been over there a lot. I've done a lot of appearances. There really is well, it's not a firewall, but there's a huge separation in their newsroom from the people who report the news versus the people who work on the primetime opinion shows. Listen to how this person represents. We're going to watch it again just so we can break down the delivery of this news to the very sad MSNBC viewers.
Despite President Joe Biden holding rallies across the country in recent weeks to tout the state of the U.S. economy,
to tout the state of the U.S. economy. In other words, despite the fact that everything's wonderful in the economy right now, and it's so great that Joe Biden's going all over the country to tell everyone about how great it is, because it's great for us over here. Isn't it great for you? Of course, I think we all agree. The economy is great. And despite the fact that Joe Biden is doing such a great job,
his message still may not be resonating with many Americans.
Americans are too stupid to get the message. I mean, what more do you want from this guy? And God knows we here at MSNBC are doing whatever we can to lie to to deliver the message of the great economic prosperity we're all feeling. But the Americans, they're stupid. They don't live in Manhattan like you and I do. So they're just Neanderthals. They don't get it. They're so stupid. Guess what they're thinking of doing? Guess who they like better?
According to a new Fox News poll, more than half of registered voters say they would trust Donald Trump more with the economy than President Biden.
Did you hear that delivery? Donald Trump. Shockingly, according to a new poll, over half of Americans would trust Donald Trump with the economy. I mean, does anyone forget what the economy was like under Donald Trump? I mean, it was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah, it was really good, actually. This is how clueless in their biased bubble these guys are. He literally, he lives in Manhattan. He comes down his elevator. He goes to his waiting car. He gets driven to the studio. He leaves his waiting car, hits the sidewalk for maybe 12 seconds, And then he goes right into 30 Rock, goes up the elevator into the studio. He's constantly surrounded by people who all agree with him and believe in him. And he can't for the life of him understand what you idiots in Oklahoma are thinking. And it just permeates from his delivery. Oh, it's wonderful to see. Speaking of New York, two contrasting headlines about today's events in New York that sort of tell you exactly how these two presidencies approach their job and how they're being received by the American people right now. USA Today, Biden to bring out the celebrities at high-dollar fundraiser with Obama and Clinton. It's not just a high-dollar fundraiser. It is a record-breaking fundraiser. Joe Biden is dropping everything in Washington, D.C. because, he's got such a busy schedule. He's going to do a fundraiser in New York at Radio City Music Hall with Lizzo. And it's going to be a celebrity elite fan fest with Barack Obama and, yes, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. A week after in New York, everyone was doing victory laps and clutching their pearls at this outrageous so-called sexual abuse judgment where Donald Trump has to fork over tens of millions of dollars because of the horrible experience that E. Jean Carroll had back in the 90s that she literally can't remember. And while at the same time they're decrying him, they're going to stand on stage with Bill Clinton. Remind me what Bill Clinton was doing with women back in the 90s? So Joe Biden's going to be in New York for that. Coincidentally, Donald Trump today will also be in New York. It will not be at a fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall with Lizzo and Bill Clinton. Donald Trump will be attending the post-funeral wake of a 31-year-old police officer who was murdered in the line of duty by a criminal who had 21 prior convictions but was let out on the street yet again. Last year, one of his convictions was for gun crimes. It was a gun crime. He violated one of those common sense gun safety laws that Democrats are always talking about, that Republicans oppose. We need more of those laws on the book, so when people violate them, we can put them back on the street, and a year later, they're going to murder a cop. The family of this police officer in New York invited Donald Trump to the wake today, and he'll be there for that. Donald Trump in New York for the wake of a police officer. Joe Biden will be there. He'll be raising money with Barack, Bill, and Lizzo. I promised you state by state polls, and I'm going to give you that now. Real Clear Politics averages. Whoever's in the lead there, they color the print either red or blue, right? And that looks pretty damn red, doesn't it? And I mean Republican red, conservative red, not commie pinko red. These are the RCP average of polls. So you'll see head-to-head on an average of poll basis, Trump has a 1.7-point lead. Five-way average, he's got a 2.3 lead. In the battlegrounds across the board, it's 3.7. And let's break that down state by state, shall we? Wisconsin, Trump 1.2. Arizona, Trump 5.4. Georgia, Trump 5.0. Michigan, Trump 3.7. That's why Biden's throwing Israel under the bus, because he's trying to salvage Michigan because of a largely Palestinian and Muslim community in Dearborn. Pennsylvania, Trump 1 point. North Carolina, Trump 5 points. Nevada, Trump 4.3 points. Yeah, my friends, the polls are in right now. I know that it's March. I know that there's a lot to be done. I know that they're probably going to come up with new charges against Donald Trump. But right now, it is a bloodbath. It is a slaughter. It isn't even close. It is a blowout. And this, by the way, despite everything that they have thrown at Trump. All of the criminal charges, all of the civil charges, all of the money, all of the time, all of the media coverage that focuses just on that. And yet, even with that steamroll of a political attack that he's endured for the last year, that is only intensified right now, somehow, unlike Joe Biden, Trump's message is resonating with the American people. Why? Because despite what my friend over at MSNBC said about how Joe Biden just can't cut through the noise and the American people don't really understand the job that Joe Biden's doing, actually, sir, it's quite the opposite. The American people have a full awareness of the job that Joe Biden is doing and has done. And the overwhelming opinion of those Americans is, thank you, we've had enough. Millions of Americans love their credit cards that earn them rewards, right? I do. I've got credit cards that earn me rewards on airlines, on hotels. I've also got one that gives me cash back, right? Well, the big corporate mega stores, they want to take those awards away from you. Why? And they're getting some members of Congress to help them. Rewards that you use on groceries, rewards that you use on school supplies, rewards that you use to get cash back so you can save on gas or use that cash to grow your small business and try to get ahead. Travel miles that you use to visit your loved ones and make memories, or maybe to have your loved ones come and visit you. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would eliminate credit card rewards. No more travel miles, no more cash back. When lawmakers help corporate mega stores line their pockets, American families end up paying for it. So tell your senator to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Go to handsoffmyrewards.com so you can learn more about the bill. And then there are tools right there for you to take action today and stop this thing dead in its tracks. That's handsoffmyrewards.com. All right, now surely you've seen the news cycle about the epidemic of squatters, right? Squatters who basically are people who enter into a building that they don't own, take illegal, unlawful residence of it, and then when the owner of that building discovers them and tries to evict them, they're protected by local municipalities, by local governments, almost always run by Democrats, who have set up laws to protect these thieves from being kicked out of somebody else's home. It's an absolute nightmare. And add to this the fact that illegal immigrants are now getting advice on how to do this. So these illegal immigrants come up from God knows where, enter our country illegally. Biden lets them stay, gives them free handouts, and now they're learning that they can go in and find an abandoned home, live in it, and it's theirs to keep. That's literally what's going on in the United States of America right now. Now, there's a group of vigilantes in California who have had enough. In the San Fernando Valley, they put out this video. They call themselves the Squatter Squad. Take a look.
Are you on the lease? Yeah. You're on the lease? Show me you're on the lease. Show me you're on the lease. You know you're not on the lease. It's your dog. Baño de la oficina. Métanse por dentro, por favor, para que no salga bueno. Dale. I'll move that car for you. Okay. Go ahead. I don't know.
Okay, we're clear. Yeah. Everything's safe. Okay, the owners, guys are gonna spend a little time in there.
Now, this is cool that vigilantes are doing this, but they shouldn't have to. There's something basic and American about owning a home, whether you own it to live in or to rent out as a rental property. There's something viscerally, instinctively American in our DNA about our rights as property owners. Why in the hell are the police commanded to side with these thieves, the people who are stealing these homes and calling themselves squatters? Why? Because Democrats. That's the answer. This is California. But the people know better, and the people are rising up, and the people are taking, well, the law into their own hands, because that's what happens when people feel powerless. And the elected officials and those who are supposed to enforce the law do quite the opposite. Now, in Florida, it's a bit of a different story. Here's what the DeSantis team, the governor of Florida, put out celebrating a landmark bill that the governor championed and just signed into law.
No, do not touch me. Do not touch me.
They're the house guests no one invited.
You're trespassing. And you're harassing me.
Squatters making themselves right at home.
A new trend on TikTok causing alarm bells to ring nationwide.
They're not squatters' rights. They're your rights.
Moreno is telling his followers to avoid living on the streets in the United States. They can, quote, invade empty homes and live there.
A Las Vegas man returns from his trip to find his apartment completely ransacked by what he says are squatters.
Last August, trespassers destroyed a multi-million-dollar home in the Hollywood Hills. And squatters turned this $4.5 million mansion in Beverly Hills into a party palace.
I had squatters. They did $40,000 worth of damage, stole appliances.
Bye. At one point, even threatening her with a tire iron.
Earlier this month in New York, a woman returned to a property she inherited to find squatters living there. She changed the locks to get them out, and the state of New York arrested her instead of the squatters.
So Adele, you're getting arrested right now?
I'm being arrested.
For what?
For being in my own home.
Just a few days ago, 2 squatters in New York City allegedly murdered the property owner when she confronted them for being in her apartment illegally.
Police say 2 alleged squatters killed a mother and hid her body in a duffel bag in an apartment.
Florida lawmakers have now passed a bill to make it easier to get rid of squatters.
Today in the state of Florida, we say very simply, what passes muster in New York and California is not passing muster here. You are not going to be able to commandeer somebody's private property and expect to get away with it. We are in the state of Florida ending the squatter scam once and for all.
Yeah, great video from Team DeSantis. That's Ron DeSantis at his best. We see the insanity going on in these blue states. Ron DeSantis says, well, that's insane. That's not happening here. He goes over to his legislature in Tallahassee, says, let's get a bill going. Let's sign it into law. Bing, bang, boom, and it's done. And then he effectively sends the message out like he did last night on Hannity.
We're settling like the Old West. You'd go, you didn't know who owned it. There weren't records. So if people started a community there, then someone came 6 or 7 years later and claimed it was theirs. Well, that was different. It's an adverse possession. It was never intended that you could just go into some subdivision and break into a house and start living there, and then all of a sudden have all these rights vested. In New York, there was a case, and it was reported, where the homeowner went when someone had taken over her house, and the police did not evict the squatters. The police ended up arresting the homeowner. What kind of a country is that? And so, like on so many issues, what New York does, what California does, Florida will do the opposite. And so the squatter scam ends today with our legislation. And it's important because, Sean, you know now, being a Florida resident, we've got people that will be here for 7 months of the year. And then they'll go to Michigan or New York or even Canada. So what? You come back after the summer and someone's in your house and then they just get to stay there for 6 months. Now in Florida, you call up, you fill out a form, sheriff comes, and the sheriff kicks them out of your property.
Yeah, it's brilliant, actually, if I may say. And he's so right about Florida in particular, or any other state down in the South where people sort of, snowbird, they call it, right? Your house is sitting there empty for a couple of months. Somebody comes in and you've lost your home. And I want to be clear, it's Democrats who want to protect the people who have stolen your home. Well, I've got plenty to say about this, and I'll share it with you. But one last message out of New York. Apparently, folks in New York, politicians, whether it's the mayor or the governor, they recognize that this is kind of looking bad. So you'd think they do something about it. They do what DeSantis did, right? They go out there and actually change the law to protect homeowners' rights and property owners' rights. Or maybe they tell police, go start evicting these people. Nope. They went on a PR offensive, talked to local media types, and they decided to put out tips for property owners to keep this from happening. Here's the tip that they want homeowners to adhere to so that you can fight back against these criminals. Here's your tip.
What else can you do?
You can do this, Phil. Look, this was $3.47 at Home Depot. It is a no trespassing sign. You could put this up in your front door, on your property line, somewhere where you can see it from the street. But this is the catch. Take a time-stamped picture of the sign. Most iPhones do this automatically because what you want to prove to police is that the sign was up before the squatters moved in. You know what I mean? So you have to show that time and date stamp. That's also why video security is so important. You can show they broke in, entered illegally, and then you have helped take away their squatter rights.
And we've heard from homeowners who use the sign with the camera to get out squatters. So we know it works.
Look, a lot of people have second homes. They've got property. Maybe they've inherited something that's not really right in the town or neighborhood where they live. All of this makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's when you should ask friends and family, hey, cruise by my house, take a look, see if there's a car in the driveway, light on or off. And if you see something, don't tell them to confront the people inside, because as Dan's camera saw, that can get really dicey. Just tell them to let you know.
What else can you do?
See, it's on you, man. If you've got people who have invaded your home and they live there now and you can't get rid of them, well, did you put a sign up? I mean, what did you expect? You call the cops in New York. People are living in my house and I can't get them out and they won't leave. Well, where's the no trespassing sign? I didn't think I needed a no trespassing. Well, yeah, there's not a no trespassing sign. I mean, what do you expect, man? Of course they're going to live there. I need to know that there was a no trespassing sign. And they're serious about this. If you own a property and it's not near your home, make sure you have friends and family go and check on it. If you don't, you only have yourself to blame. The criminals have come in and stolen it. Criminals who the Biden administration and Democrats have welcomed with open arms to come across our border illegally. Because, this is what they mean by a sanctuary city, right? This is what they meant. You wanted a sanctuary city, you got your sanctuary city. Can you imagine? I mean, this is a great idea to solve the shoplifting problem. You've seen all the viral videos of people going into CVS's or Walgreens with the big hefty bags and they just fill it up and clear off the shelves. Guys, all you got to do is put up a sign. No shoplifting. Or maybe a sign in every retail store now. Gucci, Nordstrom, whatever. Just have a sign say, hey, FYI, just so you know, all the stuff that's in here on the shelves, the really nice expensive things, you can't just take it and walk out with it. You have to buy it. Make sure it's in 5 different languages to that sign. Otherwise, the cops really can't do much for you. Yeah, what do you expect? Oh, you had a home invasion? People came in and took your TV and your computers? Well, if you didn't have a sign up, you only got yourself to blame, pal. Not only is this an outrage and despicable and disgusting, that we norms, that we, typical law-abiding, tax-paying, leave me the hell alone, I just want to live my life with my children and my wife and just enjoy what America has to offer because I've worked my ass off. Us, that we now have to go the extra mile and defend our rights from people stealing our homes. A home is the most expensive single item that you will ever own in your lifetime for the vast majority of Americans. And why we're using this cutesy sort of Old West term like a squatter, like as if this is like the pre-statehood days in Oklahoma where the boomers and the Sooners are out there in their covered wagons and they're charting out parts of the prairie for themselves and squatting on it. That's not what this is. We've got to stop calling them squatters. We've got to call them what they are. Thieves. They are thieves. They are not just stealing your home and your property. They're stealing the most expensive thing you own. If they stole your car, that would be pretty cut and dry. What do you call them? A squatter in your car? That's grand theft auto. But suddenly, because it's a, $500,000 home, that's different. Hey, they have rights. Listen, not only is this a brilliant move by Ron DeSantis in terms of differentiating how Republicans govern versus Democrats. Not only is this critically important to protect the time-honored, since the day of this nation's existence, understanding of the most fundamental right we Americans have, and that's the right of ownership of our properties and our homes. Not only is it right and just, it's also great politics. It's brilliant politics. My God, make the Democrats defend this. What? Make every single Democrat elected official defend the current policy in these states that protect the people who have stolen homes from everyday homeowners. Force them to. Donald Trump on the campaign trail right now should say, this is what he should say at his rallies. I want to commend my very dear, close, personal friend, Governor Ron DeSantis. My governor, I admire him so much. Greatest governor in America, as long as he just stays right where he is. I want to commend him for passing this law. It's common sense. And if I get elected president, on day one, I will send the exact same bill to Congress, because this shouldn't be a state-by-state question. This should be a federal law. It should already be presumed in our Constitution and the basic rights that we have, that a man or a woman's home is his home. I will pass a federal squatters' rights, a federal homeowners' rights, ending the squatter scam law the second you elect me president. And make Joe Biden oppose that. Make Kamala Harris oppose that. Make Hakeem Jeffries defend what's going on in New York right now. My God, but fight this election on that territory, the territory that they can't defend. Make Democrats defend the indefensible. It's such a no-brainer. Who is running these campaigns right now? It's great politics. And there is something just so fundamental in our understanding as Americans. When you finally purchase a home, no matter how small and quaint it is, or no matter how elaborate and glorious it is, that it's your home. You finally own a home. These Democrats are always talking about the American dream, and they're always making up their own version of the American dream. The American dream: you work hard, you follow the law, you pay your taxes, you save your money, you don't spend extravagantly, you live a modest life, you save up your money so you can buy a home, and no one can ever take that home away from you. It's your home. And now the Democrats' American dream is you come from some foreign country, you illegally come in here, push through our border, we'll catch you, we'll release you, you go do whatever you want, work illegally, we'll give you handouts, and if you steal somebody's home, we'll take your side, and we'll protect you as much as we can. That's the new American dream. That's the Democrats' new American dream. Just saying, if I were running a campaign right now for president, I'd make this a pretty big issue. Pretty big issue. Financial experts expected the Fed to lower interest rates last month. In fact, they're hoping for 6 rate cuts this year to finally bring down those interest rates and balance out the real estate market and other aspects of the economy affected by the Fed rate. That's what we were expecting. That did not happen. In fact, the inflation data just came in, inflation higher than expected. And of course, we didn't get a Fed rate. In fact, we'll be lucky to get maybe 3 cuts this year, but the way it's going, probably none. It's more of the same. It's bad. And this is not going away. It can't. The numbers are undeniable. We are $34 trillion in debt right now. And yet we keep printing money. That pushes prices you pay for everyday items even higher. You can either bury your head in the sand about this, or you can actually do something about it. Diversify a portion of your savings into gold with Birch Gold Group. Gold is your hedge against inflation. Birch Gold makes it easy to own. They'll help you convert any existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. And then you don't pay a penny out of pocket for that process. They've got a A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. They've got thousands of satisfied customers. You can trust Birch Gold too. All you need to do is text Larry to 989898. That's Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold, then talk to a precious metals specialist on how you too can protect your savings from persistent inflation with gold. Text Larry to 989898 right now. All right, the ladies on The View hosted an author. His name is Coleman Hughes, and he's got a brand new book that suggests that maybe the best way to mend racial relations in America today is for us to do our utmost to transcend identifying everyone in our lives based on the color of their skin and instead judging them on the content of their character. Boy, oh boy, does that sound familiar. That's a radical new idea, apparently, to the academic left, where they've been inundated with the Ibram X. Kendi anti-racism mantra that race is everything. And if you try to judge somebody based on who they are and how they behave and what their internal values and character are, rather than judging them preconditionally on the color of their skin, that you are, in fact, the racist. That's right. That's right. You must immediately evaluate someone based on the color of their skin and make a predetermined notion on who they are, what they believe, and how they behave solely based on their color of their skin. Otherwise, you're racist, which, again, by the way, is the opposite of reality. The definition of racism is prejudging people based on the color of their skin. But this is the world we're living in right now. And that is the prevailing thought in academia, and it's the prevailing thought at the levers of government right now, either at the Pentagon or in the Biden administration and every other department. Everything is shot through the lens of anti-racism, critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, this young man, a very smart and well-spoken young man, stood out and said, maybe there's a better way here. He studied Martin Luther King's ideas and dreams and put together a book. And he was invited on The View. And the ladies of The View, although they behaved themselves in a relatively polite way, decided to call this man ignorant, naive, and racist, or at best, an Uncle Tom. Now, we're going to watch quite a bit of this. And really, I think the thing that is most striking is how Mr. Hughes conducts himself here with dignity, with patience, with tolerance. And he never rose to what they were trying to do to him. And he should be commended because he's a better man than I. Take a look.
Arguments for a colorblind America. What do you mean when you say that?
So a lot of people equate colorblindness to I don't see race or to pretending not to see race. I think that's a big mistake. We should try our very best to treat people without regard to race, both in our personal lives and our public policy.
Of course.
It has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything.
When I went to school, there was no black history. None of those things were taught. And here in America, that's how people saw you. I don't want to say it's your youth, but I think you have a point, but I think you have to also take into consideration what people have lived through. Women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a black person, there were a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you. Trying to equal the playing field. I think that's what a lot of folks have been trying to do.
Quick interjection here, and then we'll get back to the video. Understand what Whoopi Goldberg is doing here. First of all, diminishing him and saying it without saying it, that you're young and you're naive and you don't know the struggle we went through, number one. Number two, Whoopi Goldberg was discovered in her early 20s back in 1984 by a film director, Mike Nichols. She was doing a sort of stand-up one-woman show in the New York's Greenwich Village. He discovered her, helped her develop it into a one-woman show, and put it on Broadway at the Lyceum Theater in 1985 it was. I know this because I saw the show as a young person because my uncle was the stage manager of the show. I met Whoopi Goldberg back then. This was before Color Purple. This is before Ghost, before The View, before everything that she did. She didn't go to college either. She's trying to explain that when she went to school, it was awful, it was racist, it was terrible. Whoopi Goldberg is a multi-millionaire who doesn't really work for a living. She sits on her fat ass now and delivers her opinion that nobody gives a crap about. She's won an Emmy, she's won a Grammy, she's won an Oscar, and she's won a Tony. And she's sitting there saying, you don't know how racist this country is, young man. I know. What does she know? Also, last I checked, Whoopi Goldberg exclusively dates white men. Frank Langella for a long time, and then Tony Danson when he wasn't. Tony. Oh God, the guy from Cheers. Oh, Larry. I was on such a roll. This is what happens. I do this thing without a script. I get all into it. I get rolling, and then I trip over one thing, and it all grinds to a halt.
I can't help you out on this one.
Kevin, you can't help me on this? Oh my God. Sam from Cheers. It is Sam Malone. Yeah, Sam Malone. What's the actor's name? For God's sake, people. Why can't I? Ted Danson. I said Tony Danson. That's where I got stuck. Dates almost exclusively white men. Frank Langella for a while there, and then Ted Danson. Although, to be fair, Ted Danson famously did appear at a birthday party for Whoopi Goldberg wearing blackface. And Whoopi thought it was hilarious. But you, sir, you young man, have no idea how racist this country is. If it weren't so racist, I would have won 2 Emmys and 2 Grammys and 2 Oscars and 2 Tonys. Ted Danson. Thank you. Everyone in the chat now at Rumble is helping me out with that. I appreciate it, Sarah, and reference design. Yes, Tony Danson. I converged Ted Danson with Tony Danza. See, my 80s sitcoms collided and merged. Totally understandable. All right, so that's Whoopi's contribution. This pampered, rich, fat-ass woman sitting there literally does nothing for a living except for an hour reads from her cards and calls Republicans nasty names. But she wants to tell this man about the reality of racism. All right, fine. Do your thing, Whoopi.
You know, as a counterpoint, when I was in 5th grade, we all watched Roots. So these are different experiences. I think it's also different generations. I view this notion of a colorblind society similar to the idea of a peaceful society. It's a North Star. And the point is not that we're ever going to get there. We're not going to touch it. But we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards. And we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco.
Public policies that address socioeconomic differences would be better at benefiting disadvantaged groups, and that race-based policies often hurt the very people they're trying to help. What are some examples of policies that would be better at reducing racial disparities?
Class, socioeconomics is a better proxy for disadvantage. The default right now in a lot of areas of policy is to use Black and Hispanic identity.
When you say that socioeconomics picks out people in a better way than race, you see the huge disparity. Your argument, and I've read your book twice because I wanted to give it a chance, your argument that race has no place in that equation is really fundamentally flawed.
Well, first of all, that may be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Seriously, follow the logic of what Sunny Hostin just said. The premise that's being debated here now is that if we truly want to help the disadvantaged in this country, we really shouldn't look at people's race because, well, take Whoopi, for an example, or you, Sunny Hostin, for example. Sunny, why should your child get some sort of preference over a white or Asian kid who lives in impoverished Appalachia, right? If we really want to help people rise up from their economic and social and cultural disadvantage, you, Sonny, your child living in the Upper West Side of Manhattan with $1 million household surely shouldn't receive anything. Let's just look at the actual reality of the financial depredation, the diminishment that a person is living through. And Sunny Hostin's retort to that is, well, if you look at the averages, it's Black and brown families that are making less money and being hurt social economically. So if we just focus on race, that'll solve the problem. It is incredibly ignorant. It is in fact the stupidest thing. So since on average there's a disparity between white households and non-white households, if we just give an advantage to all of the non-white households, that'll even the playing field. Well, that's what we've been doing. How's that working out, son? One would almost suspect that she's just trying to protect the good deal she's got going, right? It seems that way.
Hey, Larry.
Well, there's 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Do you remember that video of Sunny Hostin learning that she is actually the descendant of slave owners?
Yeah, let's not forget that.
I think that's important.
If there is systemic racism that's inherent in the constitutional republic that is the United States of America, and some people have historically benefited from that systemic racism, Sunny Hostin is, well, sort of exhibit A, isn't she? I mean, let's face it, the only way she got where she is because she's descendant of slave owners. Crack the whip, Sonny. You're doing great.
Separate questions. One is whether each racial group is socioeconomically the same. That I agree with you. They're not.
Yeah,
Of
they're
course.
not, and the
The
stats
question
show
is-
that.
But of course, I agree with that fully. The question is, how do you address that in the way that actually targets poverty the best?
Great.
And what Martin Luther King wrote in his book, Why We Can't Wait, is he called it, we need a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged. And he said, yes, we should address racial inequality. Yes, we should address the legacy of slavery. But the way to do that is on the basis of class. And that will disproportionately target Blacks and Hispanics because they're disproportionately poor, but it will be doing so in a way that also helps the white poor, in a way that addresses poverty as the thing to be addressed.
That part is true, but as you are a student of Dr. King, I'm not only a student of Dr. King, I know his daughter, Bernice, right? So I'm going to get to my question.
Go ahead, go right ahead.
I think the premise is fundamentally flawed. You claim that color blindness was the goal of the civil rights movement based upon Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, content of character versus the color of skin. Bernice, Dr. King's daughter, points out that 4 years after giving that speech, actually,
I'm gonna let you finish, Sonny. But do you know? I mentioned earlier that Whoopi Goldberg just sits on her ass and reads from her cue cards. Do you see what I'm talking about here? These are professional broadcasters whose whole job it is to talk to each other and interview people. And am I the only one who is annoyed by the fact that they can't even remember the one question they were going to ask their guest? They all have to write it down and read it from their cards. What is wrong with them? How hard is it? The hardest part of their job today is going to be asking this person one question, and even that they have to write down. That said, the fundamental flaw in this question, you may have studied Martin Luther King, but I know his daughter. So what? Again, this is why Coleman Hughes is a much better man than I, because my only answer would be, so the F what? Here comes the question, though.
Dr. King also
We're on card number 2 here, by the way. Card number 2 for the question.
said this: a society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for Negroes. He also said in 1968, it was about less than a week before he was assassinated, this country never stops to realize that they owe a people kept in slavery for 244 years. So rather than class, he did write about that earlier on. Right before his death, he made the argument for racial equality and racial reparations. And so your argument for color blindness, I think, is something that the right has co-opted. And so many in the Black community, if I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right, and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a
Well,
Republican.
so how do you?
He's
how-
never voted
well,
for a Republican.
You've said that you're a conservative.
No, no.
No, you did. You actually said that in the podcast that you did 2 weeks ago.
I said I was a
He's
conservative.
not. Yes, yes, you did. So, but my question to you is, how do you respond to those critics?
Okay, let's give it. Let him answer.
Okay, now we're going to hear his answer, but do you see the despicable, disgusting, racist thing that Sunny Hostin just did there? I'll get to the Martin Luther King thing in a moment after we hear Mr. Hughes's response, but this whole idea, by the way, let me just say, even if he is a conservative Republican, which he is not, I assure you, even if his message has been co-opted by the right, whatever the hell that means, did you see any actual challenge to the argument that he's making? This is a textbook ad hominem attack, but also done in this backhanded third-person way. There are some who are out there who will call you a charlatan. Sonny, grow some balls and call the man a charlatan. We know you think it, but instead of you telling him that face to face, you're like, well, there are some out there who will call you a charlatan. How does she keep her job? Well, we know how she keeps her job. And let me just be clear here. Even if he were a conservative Republican, even if he were a charlatan, even if his message was co-opted by the right, whatever that means, it could still be a very good idea. It could still be right. It could still be good. It could still be the thing that we should do. But she doesn't want to engage in that conversation. Instead, the message is sent to this young man and anyone else who might want to think the same way. This is how you'll be treated, you charlatan Uncle Tom. This is disgusting. This is disgusting. And any other person on that panel, any white person on that panel who did this would in fact be fired. Would absolutely in fact be fired, except maybe Joy Behar, because she wore blackface too in her past.
First thing I think it's very important. The quote that you just pointed out about doing something special for the Negro. That's from the book Why We Can't Wait that I just mentioned.
Yes.
A couple paragraphs later, he lays out exactly what that something special was.
Yes.
And it was the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, a broad class-based
But
policy.
he also says you must include race.
No, he didn't. He says it's
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, everyone should go read the book Why We Can't Wait. Let's not get sidetracked by that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were compelling. I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me with no evidence.
But I want to give you the opportunity to respond to the
I appreciate
the criticism.
I appreciate it. There's no evidence that I've been co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because I feel it.
Alyssa.
So, again, I cannot say enough about that young man. Coleman Hughes is his name, and I want to get his book now. I mean, who here thinks that maybe he knows a little bit more about what's in Martin Luther King's book and what was Martin Luther King's agenda than Sonny Hostin, who happens to know Martin Luther King's daughter? Freaking meaningless non sequitur. And I want to say this one last thing here about Martin Luther King, this rewriting of history and the recreation of Martin, because Ibram X. Kendi and Barbara D'Angelo and all these people who are trying to push this critical race theory, anti-racism crap on not just us and our governmental institutions, including our military, but on your children. The woke kindergarten class where 5-year-olds are divided by race and they're asked to look at each other based on the color of their skin instead of, you put a black kid and a white kid together in a playground when they're 4 years old, and they'll be holding hands and playing and hugging each other because no one's taught them to be racist. Now they're being taught to be racist by the left in this country. While that's all being adjudicated, and you can go and look and see who has a better handle on who Martin Luther King was, the racist Sonny Hostin or Coleman Hughes, let me just say this about Martin Luther King, who I consider an American hero. If, in fact, Sonny Hostin is correct, and that the real legacy of Martin Luther King is, in fact, to judge each other based on the color of our skin and not on our values and the content of our character, if they're all trying to sort of say, oh, that thing he said in the Civil Rights March where he said he had a dream that his daughters would grow up and they'd be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, that thing he said, he didn't really mean it. That's not really his legacy. Oh, many years later, right before he was assassinated, he changed his mind about all that. Let me just say, on behalf of probably the majority of Americans, if that's true, if that's the case, if Martin Luther King's legacy is actually the opposite of the I had a dream speech and the judge everyone by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, if you want to erase that now, and that's not what he stands for, then we got to remove the federal holiday. We got to take down the monument in Washington, which is actually, sadly, not a great monument. He deserves better. If you want to rewrite his legacy to fit into the mold that you have now created in this post-racial equality America, where we're actually supposed to focus hyperly on race, then let's rethink the whole federal holiday and monument thing. because that's not my Martin Luther King. And that's not the Martin Luther King that I was in favor of honoring in this country. One quick thing, by the way, about how the left has rewritten Martin Luther King's legacy. If you go to the memorial in Washington, D.C., it's just off the mall where he gave that speech. There's something very striking about it. There's the statue of Martin Luther King. I live in D.C., so I go to the monuments a lot. It's one of the perks of living here. It's got the beautiful statue of him. It's okay. I shouldn't call it beautiful, but it can be inspiring. Head to toe, standing there, looking off into the future, into a distant freedom that he's hoping for his progeny. That's one part of the memorial. The other part of the memorial is a wall that has famous quotations from Martin Luther King, famous statements that he made in all of his public speaking or in his writings. And there's something striking about what the left did when they designed this memorial to him. There's something striking about the sayings that they chose, the quotes from Martin Luther King. What do we know about Martin Luther King? The one identifying characteristic of him, other than the fact that he was a civil rights leader, what's the other thing that he was? What was his profession? What do you know? In fact, we call him this all that. The people who call him Dr. King, I don't like that. Yes, he was a doctor, but a doctor of what? A doctor of theology. You may like to call him Dr. King. I like to call him Reverend King. He was a man of the cloth. He was a pastor. He was a Christian. And you know what's fascinating about every single quote at the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C., as you go and you look and you reflect on his life and his legacy and his message to the world? Not one quote makes any reference to God. Not one. The man was a reverend. His most powerful speeches, his most compelling arguments on behalf of civil rights were rooted in Christianity, were rooted in ethical monotheism. No matter your flavor of Judeo-Christian religion, he spoke to your heart and to your relationship with God and about the dignity of every human being created in God's image. And it never found its way to the Martin Luther King Memorial, created, designed by leftist Americans, leftist Democrats in this country. I'm sorry. I will not stand for this additional chapter being rewritten about Martin Luther King. Sunny Hostin should be ashamed of herself. Sunny Hostin should be fired. We know who on that stage in that appearance that you just saw best represented the Martin Luther King dream. And that was Coleman Hughes. All right, we have a story coming. This is pretty delightful, actually. This is a city council meeting in Irving, Texas, and I want you to see a local citizen who is fed up. He is outraged over that city's resistance to transgender athletes. Take a look.
Yo, Irving City Council, how you doing? My name is Tiny, and I'm a professional sports gambler. But unfortunately, my career is at a standstill because I got 6 baby mamas all in the DFW Metroplex. So I can't live in a state that's got illegal gambling. In a sense, it will be March Madness. I'm coming up here to beg y'all to make sports gambling legal in the city so I can stack my paper and pay for the illegitimate children. I know some people think sports betting is risky, but I got an unbeaten system that can put money in all y'all pockets. Seriously. My system is easy. I bet on the blackest and darkest teams in college sports because blacker the berry, sweeter the juice, and better the jump shot. I also got a sports betting angle that's foolproof since y'all want to let all these transgenders up in the league. That is foolproof since y'all want to let all these transgenders up in the league. I became almost a millionaire betting on Leah Thomas's big ass winning all them swimming meets. And just like these transgender swimmers, my swimmers are strong. That's why I got so many baby mamas. But you know what that means? I got a lot of bills to pay. So I'm sick of risking my life and my freedom on gambling illegally on transgender athletes. So I beg you, Irving City Council, to please legalize sports gambling, because I can't afford to be up in the penitentiary doing 5 to 10 years on some weak ass gambling charge. I also would like it if y'all could give me some reputations, because Irving is hella white and I'm hella black. My great grandfather was a slave in Mississippi, so y'all owe me for real.
1 minute left.
And I'll say one more time, you white city council people need to legitimize gambling and start putting y'all's money on these transgender swimmers, because they got propellers in their back-friendly swimsuits. And remember to always bet on black. I always want to shout out to my homie, DeMarcus Calloway, who is locked up for murder, but he didn't do anything wrong, but stab a police officer, which is, according to the BLM movement, is okay. It's time to get paid, legalize it, and free my homie DeMarcus.
Okay. Alex Stein, followed by Emma West.
Alex Stein, I should have known. Yes, that's from Alex Stein, and obviously that was a parody, and I'm really glad we played that right after my impassioned plea for Martin Luther King's dream. I didn't really think of how we structured the rundown today. All right. So, yes, Alex Stein is brilliant over at The Blaze in terms of trolling city councils like that. Although sometimes I don't completely agree with his approach and his tactics, to tell you the truth. But you know what? Anytime you can be politically correct and piss off all the right people, I think you're hitting on some things here. But let's talk this through for a minute, because he may be onto something. And not the betting on the blackest basketball teams necessarily, although I sort of understand his approach there. But with regard to transgender athletes, what do? You know, you can bet on sports. You can bet on college sports right now. And if they are going to let transgender athletes compete in the NCAA without any restrictions and any sort of, I mean, why wouldn't you bet? Why wouldn't you make a little money betting on the dude competing against the women? It sort of makes sense. And to that end, we've got another person who is trying to make a point about the unfairness of transgender athletes. But this one in a different direction. This is UFC fighter Julian Erosa. And during his post-fight press conference, he delivered a challenge to Leah Thomas to meet him in the ring.
Well, I was going to say that I don't like cheaters. And so, and I don't know how you guys feel about this whole situation, but I don't like cheaters. And so I wanted to call out Leah Thomas. I wanted to encourage her to encourage him to transition from women's swimming into women's MMA, and then I'll transition to become a woman, and I'm gonna beat that dude's ass. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to say, because it's all about getting a little bit of shock value. But I mean, the world that we're living in is just, there's no common sense anymore, and it's becoming a bit, ridiculous. And obviously that's one of the big things that's always been in, it's kind of going on now. And I just don't agree with men, in women's sports, even the whole Fallon Fox thing, knocking, and the girls or guys that are fighting in women's MMA and knocking them out. It's like, it's a bad look.
Since we're on this topic, do you find it like, clearly, I mean, personally, I think when you're talking about a man transitioning into a woman's sport, when there's like a combat element, it just seems so much worse than say swimming, like you said. Do you feel like there are any instances where it would make sense, or where it could
Absolutely
be
not? No, I just fully believe. I mean, if you were, if you went through, male puberty, it's never gonna. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can give yourself to shrink your bones down. There's nothing you can do in that kind of sense. I mean, and the proof's in the pudding, right? Like you have, Mr. Thomas, who was, whatever he was ranked as a man, and then he's just beating all the women. Like, it's obvious, it doesn't matter how much estrogen you're taking. And I think we're in obviously a gray area, but these gray areas are stupid to me because it's common sense. I'm not the smartest crayon in the box, but I could tell you, if I don't know anything about anything, I can still tell you that's unfair, like in my opinion. People are going to have their opinions and say what they want, but it's just something I strongly believe in, that it's so funny to me that women will fight for their own spaces, and then they also fight for trans women to be in those spaces. And like, those are just men. Like, when is it going to be where there's going to be hundreds of men in like these sports, and then it just becomes another man sport? It's going to be like, it's so weird to me. I don't know. I mean, we could dive into that can of worms all day, but yeah, that's how.
Yeah, listen, I think the most important part of this video, especially when you talk to athletes about this issue, the most important statement was the very first one he made, where he prefaced the entire thing with, "I don't like cheaters." Because ultimately that's what this is. This is basic fairness. I mean, there are other aspects of this issue that I think are incredibly important that we focus on. The safe spaces for young women who deserve to have the dignity and privacy of their own space to change their clothes, use the restroom, or whatever they need to do. Young women deserve to be protected and have the dignity of their own locker room without a fully grown, intact man in the space with them. That's a critically important part of this. And yes, women deserve the opportunities that we've afforded as a society in women's athletics to be able to compete in a fair way so that they can get scholarships and entree into school, and also just learn the basics of what it takes to be a disciplined athlete. Athletics is incredibly, incredibly beneficial to all young people in terms of formation of their character, the formation of disciplines that they take with them into their adulthood. It's hugely important. And women should have an entree into that too. The service academies, the Naval Academy, West Point, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, what have you. One of the big talent pools that they draw from for future military officers graduating out of those academies is high school sports. When they're looking for the best and brightest, yes, of course, grades are incredibly important. And you got to be pretty smart to go to the military academies. But right up there is whether you are not only a full participant in multiple sports at the high school level, but if you're the captain of your team, if you are a leader, because it says something about not just your character, but your discipline and your wherewithal to go through endurance training, hard times, push yourself to the limit, and come out with some sort of victory, even if that means just finishing the race, let alone finishing it first. And women need to have access to those things in a way that they can thrive. That's all important. But what this guy said at the very beginning is the best and, frankly, I think the most compelling argument. I don't like cheaters. Again, just like some of the other topics we've had today, this is a winning national political issue. This is something that is so abhorrent and so contrary to what most human beings see as basic fairness, and it has been jammed down our throats. And if you dare to stand up and object to it, you're intimidated and bullied and called a bigot because you don't want to let a man who is now identifying as a woman compete and defeat actual biological women who have been training their whole lives in any given sport. If you object to that, you're a homophobic, hating bigot. And we know that's not the case. We know that what's being jammed down our throats in this respect is completely unjust and completely wrong. And why our national politicians aren't talking about it more, I, again, have no idea. Make Democrats defend this. Make Joe Biden defend his position on literally redefining what it is to be a woman in the Title IX codes. Make him defend that. I'd love to hear his articulate defense of transgender athletics. But even more fundamental to this argument that he just made, that began with, "I don't like cheaters." When he said to Leah Thomas, dude, move from swimming to MMA, I'll identify as a woman and we'll have a fight. Let's see what happens. Or as he put it, I'd like to kick his ass. Because, see, we saw what happened here several years ago, going on 10 years ago, I think. There was a fighter who went by the name of Fallon Fox. It was a biological man who went through puberty, had all of the physical advantages that men have, then identified as a woman, and began fighting in UFC. And, well, I'm going to show you the results of one of those fights. That would be Fallon Fox on the left giving you the thumbs up after a job well done. That's a man fighting as a woman. And on the right is the woman. That's the woman he fought. And she walked out of the ring with a fractured skull. Yeah, it's common sense. And yes, it's funny to think about the Alex Stein angle here. Guys, legalize betting so I can make millions on the transgender athletes. It's outrageous. It's over the top. That's what satire is supposed to be, to make a point. To make a point at how ridiculous these ideas are. Sometimes to illustrate the absurdity of an idea, you take it to its extreme to show just how absurd it is. So arguing to the Irving City Council that they need to legalize sports betting so I can make my millions for my baby mamas by betting on Leah Thomas in the next swim meet is absurd and over the top and ridiculous, but not as ridiculous as what they're trying to do with women's athletics. Because the end result is this. And there's nothing funny about that. Nothing at all. That's it for today. We'll be back for the next show. Thanks for watching. Enjoy yourself and happy Easter. A peaceful and contemplative Good Friday to everyone, and a joyful, joyful Easter this Sunday. We'll be back next time. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.